And good morning, everybody. It is Wonderful Wednesday with Gila Zak. Now, Gila, you are amazing. All right. However, I didn't know how amazing you were until I really properly got to know you in the pool at HypnoThoughts Live. You came over to me and you were so welcoming to people who aren't very well known. You actually have that special, unique part about you that is lovely and draws people in. And so you came over to me and started chatting. And actually, I think it was about 2 hours later. And we put the world to rights. We realized that we had so much in common, the way we work. And we've been friends ever since.
Yeah.
And yeah, true. And Gila, you have some very exciting things coming up at HypnoThoughts this year.
Yeah.
So please take it away. Tell us what you've got going on.
Well, I have a lot of passions, and as many people do, and one of them is handwriting analysis or graphology. And so I'm going to be teaching at HypnoThoughts this year, a post-conference training, a full 8-hour, one-day, very specialized training for hypnotists, for hypnotherapists, and for other therapists, coaches, anybody who's looking to glean a really good, sound, profound and deep way to get a fast insight into your clients' drives, their motivations, their desires, their priorities, their personality. And, handwriting, I like to think of it as another body language because it's an unconscious expression of our mood of the moment as we, use ideomotor response to put pen or pencil to paper. And even for people who type a lot, they say, well, I don't really write much, I type. With text, we can even still see certain carryovers from the written to the way that we text. And I don't know, I use this in my practice. I've been using it for over 11 years now, and I find it invaluable. So I'm really excited because so many of the books out there and I have a collection, so many of the books out there, they talk about, graphology, but not through the lens of if you were a therapist. And that's what I want to bring that's different.
Oh, great. Okay. And do you know what? I really love that you said that you can still understand those nuances that people use in texting.
Yeah.
Because there are some people who use loads and loads of emojis. I use them. And simply because I know that sometimes people will read something and they will read it the way they want to read it.
Yeah.
In texting. And this is the thing about with handwriting that you're doing is that actually it gives people more time to sit with it and actually acknowledge what's the written word. However, what you're saying is that it's the way people are doing their certain like O's or their vowels or the way they slant left and right and to do their Y's and F's and things like that. So
there's so much to it. It's the pressure that they write with. It is the size. It is the form. Yes, it is the shape. Are the letters more wide and expanded or more narrow? But it hasn't happened very often. Only a couple of times in my career. But just recently, I had it happen where I was working with a man virtually, and he wanted to come for sexual dysfunction and porn addiction, things like this. And, like every client, I say, make me a sample. He made me a sample. He scanned it. He sent it to me. And, admittedly, I didn't look at it until right before the session, a few minutes before the session, because it was a Monday and he sent it to me on a Sunday. When I saw his handwriting sample, it was just like, yeah, not working with this guy. Because there were so many traits of somebody who was emotionally unstable, likely to conceal, withhold, or lie, a tendency to ruminate and overthink with things that have a sensual or sexual nature. There was just so many red flags because, the idea is we always want to assume the positive and we're trying to confirm or negate what we see. So let's just say we have one trait in there that looks a little sketchy or dodgy, or two traits. Are there other traits that balance that out? Because in all honesty, we all have the capacity to ruminate about sexual things. We all have the capacity to lie or obscure or withhold. But when I put the whole sample together, it was just like, holy shit, yeah. And then, we read for content secondary. So You look at the form, everything first. Then when the content came through, basically this guy's like, I want to ride with you in your car to Vegas. I want to. And I was just like, holy shit. Yeah, not working with this person.
Yeah.
So there's another reason why I think this is so helpful for therapists, because, Daniel Brown's going to be doing a talk on safety for hypnotists and
I was
therapists.
just saying, that's exactly where I went. Safety.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the idea being is that, this happens very rarely. But anyway, I kept the appointment, and the guy was perfectly lovely, perfectly fine, respectful. The way he presented himself was very articulate and educated and self-aware, but his handwriting was telling me something really different. So I want to bring this class to the masses, just so that we as therapists can understand how to help our clients and also how to help ourselves should we need to.
I think it's really important. I really
Yeah.
do. And
Mhm.
and it's interesting because a lot of people also write just in capitals.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I'm taking it that's a thing as well that you
Mhm.
would because they just do. And I know
Yeah.
my ex-husband, that was all he could write was capitals.
Mhm. The
Um,
Yeah, and there's different, again, it's never just one thing. We're looking at, if it's a body language, what does that tell you? So if someone writes in all capitals, it's either someone that has a bold personality. They want to be perceived as bold. Maybe they are bold. If they're not using the lower zones, because when we write in capitals, we don't go into the lower zones. And we're not going higher into the upper zone than we would. Like, just to say you make the letter F lowercase. If you were going to write the letter F lowercase, it is the one letter that goes and covers all three zones of the page. You go up, you loop, you come down, you loop, and you bring it through and you carry. So if someone's writing in all capitals, we're not going to see the full picture of their behavior. We're just going to see that they either want to, that can also be a sign of to obscure. I can't say it right now because it's early in the morning. To obfuscate, I believe it is, to hide or withhold. But it could just be a need to be seen. This person really needs to be seen, or maybe they want to be perceived as bold. Maybe they just need structure. They really need a solid structure in their life. And perhaps there's someone who puts emphasis in places where it doesn't belong as they go through the day-to-day. So it could mean lots of different things. And I don't know if any of that matches your ex, but that's what it would
oh
be.
yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. So what about? So you said the F, because I know that's for cursive. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I actually went to school in America when I was little, so I learned cursive writing, and they don't teach that so much in some places anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so people are just doing an F like that, and they're not taught handwriting. There's a lots of us that have this set way, and then of course we make it our own as
Right.
life goes on. And I know with mine, if I'm writing like really nicely and I'm doing it for a proper letter to somebody, then I'll write sort of like really nicely. If I'm just taking my notes, I'll be
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's different types of
Yeah.
handwriting. What do you say to that?
Remember, it's our mood of the moment. So if we are in the mood that we want to present ourselves with a nice letter and we want to be really present, we want to put forward a nice form, yeah, we're going to be more thoughtful with it. You should see my notes. My client notes are just, but when I write a grocery list at home so that my husband can read it, it's going to be a little easier to read. But yes, and it is all about the way that we're taught versus who we grow to be. Because when you think about it, and incidentally, they are starting to add handwriting and cursive back into the curriculum in many states because they realize that when they took it out, it helps with motor skill development. It helps with the connection between what we're thinking, feeling, and seeing and doing. And so that's what handwriting is. We're having a thought, we're experiencing a feeling, we are physically expressing it, and then the feedback loop is completed as we see it come out on the page. So yeah, they're adding it back into the curriculum because they're finding that children very often, they're a little slower to develop some of the motor skills and things like that.
True. And then
Yeah.
they're on the, as you say, on the computer.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I know you've not minded me. I'm going to bring a couple of letters, family letters, for
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just to get some clues, like you say, because sometimes we're left like, well, I don't understand that, that it's like
Mhm.
shocking behavior and really, and
Mhm.
if you can get some insight, uh,
Mhm.
extra insight that we can't necessarily, because see, people are so good at masking things,
Yeah.
and because I believe that what we wear on the outside is our confidence, and
Mhm.
that's what we want to show to everybody,
Right.
and on the inside is our self-esteem and actually how we really feel about ourselves.
Mhm.
And as you say, that can come out in
Yeah,
the writing.
it
Um,
will.
so I
And yeah. And the thing too, from the therapist perspective, why I think this is so important is because, we want to work within our scope of practice, right? And you can see suicidal ideation, you can see neurosis, you can see psychosis, you can see the really big things that we may need a psych release for. Or we might be working with a client and they'll tell you one thing, but you're seeing something else in their handwriting, very much like the previous client I mentioned to you, but not such a big, scary, sketchy thing. It's just they're telling you, yeah, I have this issue, I have this problem, but you can see other things in their handwriting that are bigger. And I've seen a ton of people who come to me, and as I'm looking at the sample, I'm going to say, I just have a question. Has there been any time that you really feel really helpless and hopeless to the point where you just don't want to be here anymore? And they're looking at me like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm seeing some suicidal ideation. Is this recent? And they're like, yeah. And so I'm going to be bringing samples. The workbook that I'm going to be giving people for this class is not just going to have an indication of what every letter, a breakdown of every letter and the form and the slant and the pressure, all the fundamentals of handwriting analysis, but I'm going to give you samples from my own client history, my own case studies of where I'm going to be able to show you this is what that looks like. This is what suicidal ideation looks like. This is what withholding looks like. This is what a well-balanced, emotionally stable person who's just coming in for some extra help. So, this is why I'm really passionate about,
yeah,
bringing it
yeah,
to the people.
yeah, and I think especially regarding the safety bit,
Mhm.
um, I think that's huge. That
Yeah.
if you have if you're not quite sure, if somebody says they're like, got anger issues, so it's like, yeah, can you give me a sample?
Yeah.
So it's like, well,
Yeah.
one of my
Because
I'm going to share this. He was one of he had anger issues, and used to work for the mafia in Chicago. And I did help him. He was actually like a big teddy bear, really. But
uh-huh.
I don't mind saying I did get a taser.
Yeah. And here's the thing, if a client comes to you and says they have anger issues, that's one thing. You'll be able to see in the handwriting, how do they communicate that anger? How do they feel that anger? Where does that anger show up in their life? Does it live in their head? Do they bring it into the day-to-day? Or is it also tied to their base primal needs and drives, AKA money and sex? So let's just say somebody has anger issues. You can see, is there cruelty in there? And, if they have anger and they have cruelty, have the taser handy.
Yeah,
If they have anger, but they're just, again, you're going to see the teddy bear in the handwriting, then again, it's just really good information. And for people who know me, that's my tagline. It's like, that's a good information, isn't it?
yeah, and I actually, because I work from home and I have pets, dogs, cats, and and I will know actually. I glean a lot from that as well, because,
Mm-hmm.
and as I
Mm-hmm.
knew he was a big teddy bear, it was all over my dog. I mean, it was like, can he come in? Can he, like, it was like,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, he's a big teddy bear. It
Yeah.
was, it's quite interesting to see how
Right.
people are with animals as well,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as to what their personality is.
Sure.
But the handwriting, um, I again, because that's what they're showing,
Sure.
that's the bit that he wants me to see, that teddy bear bit. But you're right, it's the under bit, isn't it? It's the little secrets.
The other thing I'll add is that, one of the things that I think is the most overlooked in our industry is, do we know how to hypnotize the person in front of us? We're taught how to hypnotize. That's not that hard to do, right? You can
Mhm.
hypnotize anybody but those four words, once upon a time, ooh, story, and we go into the trance of something's going to happen, right? But
Imagine.
But I've whenever people come to see me, and I will say, when in my intake form, have you been hypnotized before? Have you ever been hypnotized, like on stage, had medical or dental or therapy? And if someone says yes, I always say, "And what was that like? Was it helpful?" And when they say no, they say, "You know what? It really wasn't." Then I ask, "Well, why not?" And it's because the therapist didn't work with them in a way that they needed for their hypnotic personality. So, for
Okay.
example, you can see in someone's handwriting their suggestibility, the way that they take in information. Is it direct and literal, inferential? Is it a combination of the two? We can see somnambulism. And yeah, we can do books and balloons. Yeah, we can do, magnetic fingers. We can do these different things that are suggestibility assessments. But again, sometimes people have what we call a defense against the opposite because of what their experience is in the moment. So I have seen clients that are somnambulistic. Their handwriting has those really rounded M's, and the humps between the two are really wide. And so they're highly suggestible individuals, right?
Mm.
But when they fill out their assessment, because I do a suggestibility assessment from HMI, it might come out dominantly physical, which means direct and literal, or dominantly inferential, which means more intellectual and emotional. But there's an incongruency because of the problem. And I see this a lot with people who have really heightened anxiety, social anxiety. They're just super, super anxious people. Or maybe they've been through trauma, sexual trauma, or relationship trauma. They're going to be behaving in a way that they show you and tell you that they're feeling, but their handwriting is going to tell you who they really are and how best to hypnotize them. And that's really what I really want to impart, because if we want to build the most rapport, if we want to be the most effective we can be with our clients, we have to know how to speak hypnotically to the person in front of us.
Yeah, because every client is unique, and you're right, it's being client-centered. Gila, I've got a question. When you've helped somebody sort of be reduce their anxiety, they know how to manage it, the suicidal ideation has gone, does their handwriting change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is kind of a chicken and the egg thing, which comes first. There was a book written years ago called, Change Your Handwriting, Change Your Life. And so which comes first? And you can give your client graphotherapeutic exercises to help them. And I will give them little books in my office. I go to the dollar store and buy these little cheap books. And I'm like, okay, every night I want you to write these 3 statements, or have your own 3 positive affirmations that you're going to write, but make sure you make your letters like this. And the other thing is, so we can use that to kind of facilitate the change that we're making at the unconscious level with hypnosis, because handwriting comes from the unconscious. And then also we will see over time that certain form or change just does seem to happen organically because of the changes that they've made with the hypnosis. So yeah, your answer is absolutely, or your observation is true.
Yeah. So will you then be sharing that in the workshop of how people can then actually encourage their clients, so they've got this issue, and this is how that can then make the change as well? Because I think it is really important for clients to take ownership of their change work and do something,
Yeah.
like, because it's not like, oh, didn't work, well, did you do such and such? It's like, were you doing this? Were you doing your breathing? Were you doing let it go? Were you doing all the stuff? No.
Yeah. Were you listening to your reinforcement audios?
Yeah, exactly. I was giving audio. Were you doing that? No. It's like, so the fact, and this is, but I love that you've got something else to give people for the change.
Yeah.
That's kind of like gold to me when you're giving that in a workshop, that people can actually use something, like you say, it's already, it's like a diagnostic to keep safe and understanding it. But then what's next?
Yeah.
What else?
And I will tell you too, the positive little golden nugget is that it builds rapport, like virtually nothing else you can do to build rapport. Because when, in part of the intake, when we're looking at it, I'm like, I'm seeing a tendency, and do you sometimes, and do you often feel, and you can tell what the way they will behave in their relationships, personal, sexual, and I'm like, and they look at you like, oh my God, how do you know all that? And they haven't told me anything. I'm like, well, I can see it right here in your handwriting. And we're going to leverage these strengths that I see here, and the places where I see you're less confident or you need support, I can help you with that. And it's just, the light bulbs go on, and it really, really builds rapport.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's a bit like your own crystal ball, if you like.
Yeah. And it's a great party trick. If you're at a party and, one time, and I will not name who this hypnotist is, but a lot of people know this particular gentleman. And we were in Orlando for one of the conferences. This was years ago. And we're sitting at lunch and we were talking about handwriting analysis. And I said, well, go ahead and just write your signature on this napkin. And they did. And then I was saying all this stuff and they're like, yeah, this is kind of spooky. I don't think I want to talk to you anymore. And it wasn't bad stuff, because handwriting is never right or wrong, good or bad. It's information. But, and I was like, well, there's a tendency for this or a possibility for that. And I don't know you and they were just like, yeah, okay, I'm going to move away from you now.
And it is funny because when I'm doing my training, I do lots of diagrams. And it's like, I'm like this or I'm like that. It's hard to write like that. And I'm like thinking, oh, is Gila watching me making them?
That's a good point. That's a good point you make. And I know we have to wrap it up here in a minute because I have a client coming in. But the one thing I'll say is that the sample has to be written with the feet flat on the floor, your hands on a hard surface in a desk, because none of us are going to be able to really give the true form if we're holding up a thing. Yeah, you're going to have real similarities in your handwriting, but to really get a true sample, the elbow needs to be sitting on the table, because then it's a full, if you think of the swan, when, Bob Burns does his swan, or you have people doing different ideomotor response things like that, or the whatever. I'm losing track of my mind right now. But the idea being is that it's supported in some way. When you do the swan, you support, right? Yeah. And so handwriting's the same. It's almost like you really have to have yourself to get a proper sample, a proper read. And if I see something that looks really strange, I'll say, hey, were you sitting down when you wrote this? Were you sitting at a table? Oh, no, I was in my car when I wrote it. Exactly. Okay. Because again,
that's helpful. Okay. Yeah. No, and that's a really important piece of information there, so that for everybody. Well, I wish you luck with it. And I know you've got some talks as well at HypnoThoughts, obviously, some presentations. Yeah. What are you speaking on?
I'm going to be doing perceptions of deception, the way that the way we feel about our body influences and affects us, our client sessions, our clients, and how we can really help people. I mean, we as hypnotists know how to help people with body confidence issues, but I'm going to go into a kind of a more overview of the ways in which that can actually come through in your sessions and the way it shows up for your clients in their life. And I also just got asked to do a second presentation. It's going to be near-death and out-of-body experiences, how hypnosis can be a bridge between realms. And this particular topic is near and dear to me because I did a little self-directed project, lots of case studies early in my career when I didn't have a full-time schedule the way I do now. I thought, I want to learn more about this. And I had a client that came to me with it. And so I put out an ad and I had lots of people come in. So I'm going to have lots of great case studies for that too. Really cool stuff.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, I'll be there. We're not speaking at the same time because I'll cry if we are.
I know. I know.
So I absolutely love that. Always love speaking with you, Gila.
Same.
Yeah, so absolutely wonderful. I know we've both got to go because we've both got people now. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So thank you for watching, everybody. And it's goodbye from me, Claudia Ricard. And it's goodbye from Gila Zak. So take care, everybody.
Thanks for having me again. Bye.
Bye.